Welcome to The Game Changer with Dr. Sharalyn, where purpose meets performance and leaders are built to shift legacies. I'm Dr. Sharalyn Payne, executive strategist, speaker, and the secret weapon behind leaders who drive transformation at the highest levels. Each episode delivers bold truths, power skills, and real-world strategies to help you lead with precision, show up with presence, and build the kind of influence that outlasts trends. This is the space where high-impact decisions are born, where influence is intentional, and where the bold don't just lead, they change the game. So if you're ready to rise, ready to lead, and ready to create the kind of impact that moves markets, missions, and minds, you're in the right place. Welcome, Game Changers. We have another dynamic episode, and today you are going to receive some concrete information that's going to take you to a greater level of performance, accomplishment, and achievement. I have an expert here who's going to be sharing with us some philosophy, some practical tools, and practical information that you can actually use to truly get to your next level. Now, I'm not just saying that. I interviewed this gentleman, and it was absolutely a fascinating conversation that I knew I had to share with my friends. Jim Marshall is here, and Jim is going to share with us some information about who he is. Jim, tell us about who you are and the people you help.
Okay. Well, I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I crafted a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics and published it in the book, Septemics Hierarchies of Human Phenomena.
Thank you. So tell us, how did you come up with the title Septemics first?
Well, the word septemics literally means of or pertaining to seven. Septemics is a philosophical science based on the fact that many phenomena related to humans occur in a sequence of 7 levels. So when I discovered it, I saw all these things with 7 levels. I said, what am I going to call this? And it was kind of obvious to call it Septemics. Awesome. But the last thing that happened before I published this was giving it a name. This existed for 25 years without a name because I was working on it. Septemics, it comprises a collection of scales or sequences, each of which breaks down various human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. Each of these scales is unique, and between them, they span the spectrum of human experience, by which I mean any problem, dilemma, difficulty, situation, etc., that any person has that has to do with people can successfully be analyzed by one or more of these scales, usually more than one.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So I appreciate you sharing with us a little bit about what is Septemics. Let me back up a little bit, though. I want to get to know you a little bit better. What would you like the audience to know about you specifically?
Well, I think the main thing they should know about me is that I'm a polymathic intellectual.
Tell us what that is.
A polymath is someone who's learned it in multiple disparate subjects. Historical examples include Thomas Jefferson and Erasmus, Aristotle. My areas of expertise include psychology, philosophy, theology, parapsychology, science, engineering, mathematics, law, literature, history, metaphysics, military science, political science, physical culture, education, human potential, organization, and music. And I hold a Bachelor of Science cum laude from City University of New York.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that. So you are well-versed and extremely knowledgeable and intelligent, I would say. So you've shared with us a little bit about what is Septemics. Is there anything else you would like for us to know about Septemics before we dive in a little bit further?
Well, the first thing I should say is how this is helpful to people, because they're going to want to know that right away. There are basically 3 areas here. First is each of these 35 scales provides the user with an infallible way of determining the salutariness or the beneficialness of any group, individual, or activity. If the group, individual, or activity moves persons up these scales, it's beneficial or positive. If it moves them down, it's detrimental or negative. Next, and more importantly, once you find out what level the person is at, whether it's yourself or another, if that itself is enlightening and beneficial, you always have a realization when you spot the level. So let's say you have trouble with your mother-in-law, right?
Okay.
She's always telling us what to do. I don't know what. So you look at the scale of control. That's relevant, isn't it? And you say, she's at level 6. That explains why she's like that. Level 6 is what in the vernacular is called a control freak. So now you know that's where she is on that scale. There probably will be nothing you can do about it, but you know what it is, so you understand her better. And when she starts her routine, Sharalyn, you shouldn't wear green dresses. You say, okay, fine, thank you. And then when she leaves, you put on your green dress. So the third area is, once you know the actual level, meaning you have to get it right, you can improve that person by moving them up one level at a time. I have solved the gradient problem that has bedeviled mankind for at least 6,000 years. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Pretty much everybody has problems and dilemmas and situations that they can't resolve. More than 99% of the time is because they don't know the gradient. Any successful coach, therapist, facilitator, etc., teacher knows that human development must be done on a gradient. You cannot make a couch potato into an Olympic athlete. There are too many intervening levels. So these 35 scales, each of which has 7 levels, are the gradients. I'm giving you the gradients across 35 axes of human phenomena. And if I may, I'd like to tell you what those axes are, so your viewers will know exactly what subject matter gets addressed in the book. Of the 35 scales, 24 of them what I call individual scales, and 11 of them are what I call group scales. Now, these are the individual scales: the scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, and the scale of reaction. And these are the group scales: the scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics. Any one of these scales by itself could dramatically improve the life of the reader. And I'll give you an immediate example. I mentioned the scale of motivation. One of the most important things to know is motivation. Why is this person doing this? People do this all the time. Some guy comes over and talks to you, and you're asking, why is this guy talking to me? Does he want money? Does he want a date? Is he selling me something? Does he need a lift? You see, you're looking for his motivation. That's how the police solve crimes. They find someone with a motive, and that person becomes a suspect.
Right.
So I have gotten it down to the 7 basic motivations of human beings. Now you might say, there are thousands of possible motivations. Well, the problem is they are all subsets of these 7. So they all fit into the 7. And because it's only 7, it's not hard to do, because you're selecting from a menu of 7, not 1,000 or an unknown number.
Let
So
me ask you something. I want to
yes,
jump in here. I want to go back to the example that you mentioned. It's very basic, but I do want to go back to that about the mother-in-law in the
yeah,
green dress. Okay,
yeah,
so we're talking about moving her or moving us, me or her, either one, up or down on that particular scale, right? And so, or the
that's
gradient.
correct.
And so she's telling me that I need to put on another color dress. We'll just say green dress, red dress, whatever it is, red dress. I look better in the red dress. How do I move her up a scale?
Okay, there's a whole section in the book about how you move someone else up to the next level. It's laid out with great specificity in the book. Now, um, obviously, you would have to have her assent in order to do that, because you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Correct.
So you have to get the person to be willing to do it, as with anything, right?
Right.
Say you have a friend who's 50 pounds overweight, right? And you say, why don't you join a gym, right? Maybe she doesn't want to join a gym. Maybe she can't deal with it. Maybe she just can't afford it, whatever. So she's not going to do it. See? So your excellent advice goes nowhere with her.
Correct.
So that's why I say you may not be able to change it. But even knowing what it is, you're still better off because you're informed. It's not vague. So now, if you said to her, I have this book here, and I'd really like you to take a look at it. If she's someone who would read a book like this, she might say, okay, and read the book and say, wow, yeah, this is really cool. I like this. And then you might be able to get her to look at the scale, and she would have to spot herself on that scale. You can't tell her. That doesn't work. She would have to look at, now, here's the problem. In this hypothetical that I gave, I said she was at level 6. One of the axioms of this subject is that when a person is at or near the bottom of any scale, it's because the person lacks insight in that area. So she's probably going to have trouble with this scale because she lacks insight, and that's why she's at level 6.
Okay. So then how do we
So
assist her?
you may not be able to assist her
Okay.
because because somebody like that, she's probably going to look at it and say, I don't know, I don't get this. I don't see how this applies to me. I mean, you've worked with clients, I've worked with clients. I had a client who was a patently disruptive element in the family. This was not subtle. Okay, it was patently obvious. And so the question came up, have you ever been a disruptive influence in a family? He said, oh no. Well, what can you do about that? They're in denial. So, but if she was at maybe level 4, then you may be able to bring them to level 3. See, because that means she has more insight in that area.
Okay.
Most of us are high on some scales and low on others. And so
Right.
when a
Makes sense.
person is high on the scale, meaning out on the other top, it's because he has insight in that area. Perfect example is Bill Clinton. Anybody who's been paying attention for the last 40 years knows that Bill Clinton is a smart guy. Even his opponents and his enemies admit that. He was a Rhodes Scholar. You ever listen to him speak? This is a smart man. Now, in his field, he was very successful. He got elected against a sitting president. He got reelected, and he left off with a high approval rating, even though he was impeached, right? So I can tell you, because political science is one of my areas of expertise, this guy knows what he's talking about. Okay? He's the last president ever to sign a balanced budget. Now, you can say, well, the Republicans forced him into it. There's some truth to that. But he was still smart enough to do what the people wanted. So, on the scale of human ability, he is at a very high level. I'm not giving any levels because that's unethical. But he's clearly at a high level. And if you study him and look at that scale, you'll see what I mean. However, everybody knows who's been paying attention in the last 40 years, he's a serial abuser of women. This is not news to anybody who's over the age of 10. Okay? So if you try to get him to look at the scale of sexuality, he's probably at a low level on that scale. Or he wouldn't have gotten all these women mad at him and had them sue him and call rape and everything else that they did. Okay? So this is a perfect example of a public figure. It's high on one scale, low on another scale. That's how most of us are. So you see this all the time. You have some guy, he's got 180 IQ, he holds a doctorate in computer science, he has his own corporation, he lives in a mansion, he drives a Maserati, but he can't get girls to go out with him. You see? So in the scale of human ability and probably some other scales, he's going to be very high. But maybe in the scale of relationships, he's going to be low because he can't do it. You see? So that's happens all the time.
So how did you discover Septemics?
Okay. Well, the story really begins when I was accepted into engineering school at the age of 16. Now, of course, I thought at the time I was going to be engineering physical things like airfoils and motors and electrons, like all the other students thought. But by the time I had my bachelor's degree, it was obvious to me that I wanted to engineer the human psyche, because that is the area of greatest unknown, of greatest mystery, and more importantly, it is the area in which we as a race are failing miserably. In industrialized society, 95% of the problems are because people don't understand people. Don't understand the wife, don't understand the son, don't understand the boss, don't understand the grandfather, whatever. And that's why in the United States, more than 50% of the people who get married get divorced. Clearly, they did not understand that other person, or they either wouldn't have gotten married or they would have lived happily ever after. That's just one example. So to make a long story short, I had a long career as a human development engineer, working one-on-one with hundreds of clients of every description, helping the individual to attain higher levels of responsibility, ethics, enlightenment, insight, whatever the person wanted to gain, whatever that person needed or was seeking.
Okay.
All of my clients improved as a result of our interaction. But incidentally, I started to notice that I could predict the outcome of the session. I never told that to anyone, but I made notes. And as the decades rolled by, it became obvious to me that the client was at a specific level on a specific scale that I had previously observed and recorded. And as a result of our interaction, he would go up to the next level on that scale. Now, this happened many thousands of times. And every time it happened, it validated my hypothesis, because the clients knew absolutely nothing about how I was doing what I was doing or what I was really doing, because I was using Socratic dialogue aided by biofeedback. Okay, so I brought engineering techniques, engineering principles, engineering ideas, engineering strategies, engineering devices, et cetera, to the human potential area. And it worked. So over a 40-year period when I was doing this, I just kept writing down what I found. So I would see a specific phenomenon in a session. Oh, this guy was at this level and he came up with this. And then I would go outside the session into like Walmart or Home Depot, and I look at you and I would see exactly the same phenomenon. And people that didn't even know me, I wasn't even talking to them. It's just like, I know flowers. So if I walk down the street and this guy's got roses, oh, he's got roses. Go to the next guy, oh, this guy's got chrysanthemums, because I know flowers. Somebody who doesn't know flowers isn't going to be able to do that. He just says, oh, it's flowers. So by 1995, I had simply observed and recorded about 32 scales that were all redundantly verified in the sessions. Now, in 95, I had a 6-level scale that I had for decades. It was one of the first scales I found. And I had been using it, and I knew it was correct. So I had this difficult client. I was trying to assess this client against this scale. In other words, where is she on the scale? And I was having trouble. I couldn't do it. I said, wait a minute. There's a 7th level. There's a level that I never saw before. And that's where she was. And as soon as I saw that, it was obvious. I knew what level she was at. And I also knew where to insert it into the 6-level scale. That was not a question. And as soon as I inserted it, at that instant, that scale went from being a line, which is what a scale is, to a plane, meaning a whole body of data. Because all of these intersecting, interlocking, interacting data relevant to the scale jumped out at me. I said, whoa, I found something here. Because having taken 26 semesters of math and having loved every minute of it, when math appears, I recognize it. And I saw this was mathematical. So then I thought, whoa, this, whatever this is, this thing, it has to be natural law because it's got math embedded in it. And anything that has math embedded in it is natural law, like the Fibonacci sequence, or the Pythagorean theorem, or Newton's 3 laws of motion. So knowing all those things and many other things in engineering and science, I said, yeah, I found something. Then my next thought was, I wonder how many of these other scales that I have might actually be 7-level scales that have.
So before you go into that, tell me, how is it beneficial?
Well, I kind of told you already the 3 things that when you spot a level, you have an epiphany. Let's say you say, I wonder where I am on the scale of basic purposes, right? And you study it. You know yourself. Now you know your basic purpose. You throw out the other 6 and you live your life at your basic purpose. That is a life-changing moment.
Okay.
That is, what is that worth? $100,000? $1 million? To me, it's worth more than $1 million because you know who you are and what you're about. And you're not going to be chasing wild geese, trying to do things that other people do that are not at your level. So once you know, then you can improve yourself. If you're at level 3, you can move yourself to level 2. And the reason I say that is, if you are at level 3 and you make a serious attempt to get to level 2, you will get there. You know why? It's the next level. If you're at 3 and you try to get to 1, you will fail because it's too steep a gradient. It's not the next level. It's just like Sir Isaac Newton famously shined white light through a prism, and on the other side he got the rainbow. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Now, the rainbow is always that same sequence, no matter what rainbow you see, because as the light slows down going through the prism, it goes to a different frequency. You can never go from red to yellow without going through orange, and that is what these scales are like. It's raw science. So once you know the level, you can move up to the next level, or you can help somebody else, like your husband or your daughter, move up to the next level, and then they will be doing better in that area. So for example, let's say most people have kids and most kids have trouble in school. So maybe you have a daughter and you see she's having trouble in junior high. So you say, come over here, let me show you something. And you open the book to the scale of scholarship. Well, she knows what that means. She can read. You put it in front of her and she's going to say, you mean there's a scale of scholarship? You say yes. Where are you on the scale? Guaranteed she's going to want to know what that is, because this is a whole new idea for her. And she's having trouble in this, isn't she? So she's going to look at it. And in a matter of seconds, I mean 20, 25, 30 seconds, she will find a bracket. She will say to you, well, I can see right away, I'm definitely not at level 1, 2, or 3, because that's the top of the scale, and I have a lot of trouble with this. So she got it down to 4. And you say, well, why don't you go ahead and read it? You can get it exactly. So she reads it. You can help her as a tutor. She goes out. She says, well, I can see now I'm at level 5. That explains a lot. That it absolutely describes who I am as a student. And then she will have some specific epiphany, like that explains why Jerry was able to do well in this class and I wasn't, because he's at a higher level, see? So then you could say to her, well, you know, we could move you up from 5 to 4 and then you'll be a better student. And she'll say, let's do it. See? And then you could work with her. And when the next report card comes in, instead of it being C's and D's, it's B's and C's, because you made her a better student by using what's in the book. Because I tell you in that chapter with specificity how to make a better scholar. It's not vague. Okay, so this is how it helps people, but it applies to anything regarding people. Could you repeat?
So it's safe to say it
My
applies to,
phone is talking to me. I don't know why. We should.
so it's safe to say that it applies to everyone.
Well, yes and no. Let me put it this way. It applies to anyone who wants to improve himself or others and can read English reasonably well.
Okay.
So it doesn't apply to the people who can't read English, which is 6.5 billion people. And it doesn't apply to people who don't want to improve themselves or others. Now, many people make the mistake of thinking, well, everybody wants to improve himself or others, and they're wrong. There's all kinds of categories of people who do not want to improve themselves or others. Psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists, professional criminals, serial murderers, morons, idiots. Excuse me. So this book is not for them. If I found some guy in, let's say, the Russian mob, professional criminal, and I gave him this book, even if he could read English well enough, he would say, well, is this going to help me figure out how to rip off people better? I'd say no. And he'd say, well, I'm not interested. But somebody like you're going to be interested because it's obvious from your profession that you help people. And you would want this technique to help you do a better job for them, and to help your husband and your wife and your mother and your sister and your brother, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let me get back to the explanation that I was giving you about where this came from before you asked me that question, although it was a very good question. So I just remember I had told you I asked the question, I wonder how many of these other scales might actually be 7-level scales that hadn't been developed all the way, like the one I had just finished, because I wasn't developing anything. I was just helping my clients and making notes. So knowing what I was looking for, which is the key, I studied all these other scales. And in a short period of time, each of them went to 7. And when it did, it manifested mathematically. So now I had 32 7-level scales, each of which had mathematics embedded in it about natural phenomena. And then as later on, I found 3 other scales, which is why there are now 35. So when that happened, I said, wait a minute. This looks like a new subject to me, because I went to school for 28 years and I never saw anything like this. So then I thought, wait a minute, this could really help people if I share it with the world. So I'm going to have to write a book so people can have it. And the first draft of the book was finished in December of '95. And I immediately sent it to colleagues of mine, all of whom had graduate degrees in a variety of subjects. And they all loved it. I was surprised at how much they loved it. They had differing responses, but distinctly positive responses. And this told me that I was correct, that I had found a new subject that people would get. This is not obscure. People get this. You know why they get it? It's natural law. Remember the first time you looked at the Pythagorean theorem? You were maybe 13 or something like that, right? In math class. And you looked at it and you said, this makes sense. I see, right? And you had it. And then the more, as you went forward in math, you just got better and better at using it. It was always there. It's never not true. That's what this is like. Some guy goes to a bookstore, he sees this thing on the shelf, Septemics. He says, what the hell is this? He takes it out, he opens a book, he looks at it, and it'll say, this makes sense. That's what people say at first blush. Now, later on, when they actually study it and learn it, they say they have a different response. It's more like, wow, this is big. That's what they tell me. They keep telling me, you've covered everything. Well, if you look at the 35 subjects that I mentioned before, it covers everything. And nobody has ever said to me, but what about this? And I found a hole in it. I didn't find a hole in it. Now, there may be other scales. I don't know that there are, although I've invited people, if you find a scale, tell me. I'll put it in the book and I'll give you credit. But nobody has ever done that. It's 30 years now since this book has been out. So you have to realize, after I got that feedback from these colleagues of mine, I spent the next 25 years of my life writing this book. Because first I had to discover the phenomena, and I pretty much already explained to you how I did that in the sessions. Although I did find 3 more scales while I was writing it, making 35. Then I had to take this data and I had to use it to craft a workable philosophic system. Now, as an engineer, I'm only interested in results and facts. To engineers, opinions and beliefs are utterly irrelevant. We don't consider them. If you said to me, Jim, I have a stream on my property, I'd like you to put a bridge across it. It's about 25 yards wide. I'd say, okay, I wouldn't take that number from you, 25 yards. It's not that I don't trust you. I would throw a laser beam across. Where do you want it? Right here? Throw the laser, and I would get a reading. It would say 26.1 yards. That is the information that I would use because it's scientific. And that is how I did this. So I had to create something that would work all the time for every person. That took 20 years because you have to realize in engineering, you're not allowed to say, oops.
Perfect. So let me ask you, before we wrap, what's the one thing that you will leave our audience with?
I want to know that the data in this book is vital for every person. It can help you to achieve your goals faster and easier by explaining things that you otherwise might think are inexplicable or random. They're not inexplicable or random. I explain them in the book. But this is all new data. So I want them to know this is there. It's waiting for you to access it and make your life better.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. One more thing for those who want to learn more about, find the book, read the book, learn more about you and Septemics, how do they find you?
Okay. I invite your viewers to my website, which is septemics.com, SEPTEMICS, where you can see what many readers have said about it, what many journalists have written about it, what the reviews are. You can read sections of the book itself, and there's even a pre-recorded introduction to Septemics that you can listen to that will explain it to a new person in 15 minutes.
Wow.
If you do all that, you're probably going to want to buy the book because it's available hardbound, softbound, ebook. The ebook is not expensive. And once you get the book, you don't need anything else to improve your life. You don't need to spend money. You don't need to hire a facilitator. You don't need to join a church, blah, 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 blah. It's just you and the book. It's all, I made it very clear. It's all in the book. Just follow the instructions in the book and you'll get it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jim Marshall. I appreciate you coming on and showing us how we can actually improve our performance with one specific tool. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharalyn.
You don't lead like everyone else, so your resources shouldn't look like everyone else's. I created the Game Changer Leadership Collection for high impact leaders like you, visionaries, change agents, decision makers who lead with intention and influence. This free high impact resource pulls from my leadership arsenal and delivers immediate actionable insights you can use right now to elevate your influence, lead with conviction, and drive lasting transformation. It's not just a toolkit. It's your first step toward leading at the level you were born for. Let me show you what's inside. The Leadership Edge Sampler. It's a preview of my 10 daily power skills to sharpen your influence and impact. The Influence Language Mini Guide. Essential phrases to increase your authority and build trust in every room you walk into. The Leadership Blind Spot Snapshot. Because the greatest risk are the ones we don't see. The power of one visual aid. A reminder that even one decision, one tone, or one conversation can shift a team or stall a movement. The Executive Briefing Checklist. A go-to tool for high-stakes communication that drives clarity and alignment. The 5-minute accountability brief, a no-fluff framework to build a culture of ownership fast. And we have the Game Changer Ascension Model Overview, my proprietary leadership growth map to help you scale your influence with intention. These are the very same tools I use with executives, culture shapers, and elite teams. Leaders who know what's at stake and aren't here to play small. Because when you're called to shift systems, influence nations, and build legacies, you can't afford to lead on autopilot. This is where your next level begins. Download the Game Changer Leadership Collection today. It's free, it's strategic, and it's built for leaders who are born to shift the game. I'm Dr. Sharalyn Payne, and this is your Leadership Edge. Thank you for joining me on the Game Changer with Dr. Sharalyn, where we don't follow trends, we set them, and we don't just lead teams, we shift legacies. If today's message challenged, stretched, or inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, tag it, lead through it. Because real leaders don't just consume wisdom, they multiply it. Want to go deeper? Subscribe to the Ultra Influential newsletter for exclusive tools, behind-the-scenes strategy, and weekly mindset shifts for the leader ready to move nations, markets, and minds. Visit www.smpistrategies.com or send a note to leadership@smpistrategies.com. And if you're ready for next level coaching or consulting that positions you as the right leader at the right time in the right place, let's talk. This is what we do, and we do it with precision, power, and purpose. Remember, change isn't just something you lead, it's something you become. Stay bold, stay brilliant, stay a game changer.